January of 2016, about 10 months after my first stroke, I reached out looking for a personal trainer. I just wanted some normality back in my life. Everyone that I'd reached out to had refused to train me because I was paralysed. I had a spinal cord injury. So as I connected with Keith, I just presumed that he knew that I had a spinal cord injury, but he didn't. And I didn't add that into my message. But thankfully, he decided to train me anyway.
Slowly but surely, she started making gains, where we got to the point where she did her first squat. We just kind of clicked. You know, we were speaking about Christ and faith and never giving up.
Without the storm, without the struggle, you'd never realise who you're meant to be. You'd never realise a fire in your belly. You'd never do the things that you want to do. Just imagine everything you've been through and it's pushed you forward to go do something else or make a decision that's right for you. Don't fear the storm. Embrace the storm and come out stronger. Because of you, I'm not quitting. Because of you, I'm not stopping. Because of you, I've got a new lease of faith and a new lease of life instilled to me, and I'm going to carry on going. I'm going to beat whatever I'm going through because you've given me that drive to do so.
What motivates me is my family and my faith, and I was never going to give up on her, and I didn't.
Díagh Galera Cordia August Foil Road. Welcome to Be My Guest with me, Mary Honan, on Lear Media TV, supporting the Samaritans, Limerick and Tipperary, and Clare's Wish Foundation. And my beautiful guest today is Riona Kelly, all the way from the UK. Hi, Riona.
Good morning.
No, Bray. How are you doing, Riona? You have an amazing story. I've been following it for so long. I suppose I might as well start by saying that in 2016?
15. It'd be in 6 days, it'll be my 6-year anniversary.
In 2015, Riona fell down the stairs and suffered with a spinal stroke. And I think it was it wasn't your first, you got another one after that, didn't you? Am I right?
I'd learned probably about nearly 4 years into it, I'd learned how to walk again without my wheelchair. I was on crutches. I wasn't quite independent without the crutches, but I was making great strides. And I had another stroke 2 days before New Year's Eve, December 2018. But I've just found out now it was a double whammy. I found out yesterday it was a double whammy. So not only did I have another spinal stroke, I had a bleed in the brain as well. So I had the double whammy and it set me back. I could only move my left arm. So everything that I gained, all the progress I'd made, I went straight back to zero and I had to start.
And how did they put that down to the fall that you had down the stairs, or was the fall as a result of the spinal stroke? Was it?
So the spinal stroke happened and then I had the fall. So I was at the top of the stairs when I had the first spinal stroke, which my body went limp, like a baby. If a baby falls down the stairs, the chances of the baby breaking anything is very slim. Why? Because when your body's limp, people who are drunk, they can have the most remarkable falls, not even have a bruise or a scratch on them. They get up and go. So I fell down the stairs. So not only did that, my spinal stroke cause my paralysis.
Yeah.
Then I banged my head as well. So I had severe concussion, and then I had at the lower lobe of my brain, I had brain damage from the fall.
Did you go unconscious?
Yeah.
Because that happened to me as well. I fainted off the stool at home, and I was unconscious for a half an hour.
Yeah, I was out of it. And then my whole spine went into shock and shut down. But that was my body's way of trying to
take the pressure.
So I couldn't move anything from the top of my spine, from C1 down. I couldn't move anything. I couldn't do anything for myself. I couldn't talk very much. I couldn't swallow. I couldn't eat. I couldn't do anything. And it was a nightmare. You know, when you wake up and you realize, oh my gosh, I've got all these problems going on. That's a nightmare. And then when you get told you're never going to walk again, well, that's an even bigger nightmare.
You had young children. You were very young yourself. You were only in your early 30s.
Yeah, I was 24 when I had my first spinal stroke. And my littlest one, he was 3 at the time. So he was only a baby. And for any mother I've never been away from my kids. They never hardly slept out. I'm the kind of mother that I'm very like my granny. They're my kids, they're my responsibility. Different if they want to go to friends to still have sleepovers, and that's different. But I would never ask anyone to look after my kids. They're my responsibility. And in my head, it's like, I only have them for maybe 16, 17 years if you're lucky. And then they're off doing their own thing. They're gone. So for me to absorb as much of them as I possibly can and to instill as much goodness as I possibly can into them, then it's my responsibility to have them around me all the time. Otherwise, parents who go, oh, I need a break from my kids, don't have kids.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have a break. After 16 years, you're going to have a break because they're going to want to be out with their friends. They're going to want to be doing their own thing. They're going to college and they're off to university.
And then you're wishing they were back as children again.
Yeah. So enjoy what you have. And when people come to me and say, oh, my kids are a bloody nightmare, I said, high five. High five that your kids are a nightmare now. Because if your kids are not a nightmare now, they're going to be a nightmare in adulthood.
But who looked after them, Riona? Because I know at that time you were going through a breakdown in your marriage also. And that was also catastrophic really for you. And to be on your own with the children, and you were also paralyzed and told you'd never walk again. What was that like? What must have been going through your mind?
It was, do you know what? It was hard, but more I felt guilty because my kids had to become my carers until I had to scream and shout to the system to give me some help. So my kids became my carers, and I felt like not only had my life changed, but everything had changed for them. Everything, you know, the stuff that we used to take for granted and just do naturally, that all stopped. And I felt more guilty for my children. And but that's when you've got to allow honesty to come in.
Yeah.
As you're struggling, you've got to allow them to open up about your struggle, because when you open up as a family, you heal as a family. And for my kids to say, I don't care. I don't care that you're like this. You know, I do remember when I was in hospital and I was critically at the time, and I'd come around and I knew what was going on and I knew I was paralyzed. So I was with it at that point. I'd come round and I remember, but I was still critically ill. And I come round and I remember my son, he's 14 now, but he was only 8 at the time. And he came around to the side of my bed and he whispered in my ear and he said, Mammy, I don't care if you spend the rest of your life lying in that bed. Mammy, please don't die. Please don't leave me. And that's when I realized that he doesn't care if I'm in this bed. What he cares about is if his mother's dead or alive. So when I was open up to them about how I felt that I was putting on them, they were like, we don't care. We thought you were going to die and you're not dead. You're still here. So and I knew that just because my legs don't work, my brain still works and I can still be a really good mammy.
It was from your T10 down, wasn't it?
Yeah, from T10 down. And it's more the acceptance. You have to accept who you are. When you accept who you are, you can move forward in life. But whilst you're going through the grieving process
and trying, it is a grief. You're grieving for all the things that you're losing out on at that time. The inability to move, the inability to just get up and move when you feel like it.
It's the biggest grief on the planet. I lost my granny. Now, my granny lived in Ireland. So when I grew up in England and Ireland. So I went to school here because my mum is still convent run when I was at school, when I would have been going to kindergarten.
Yeah.
So she was absolutely adamant. She had a really bad time with the nun. She had the cane all the time. And she says, no.
And my mother was the other. She was adamant they were going to get their hands on me. So they got their hands on me. But no, I have to say, I have great experiences with them. So, you know, I'm just probably an oddball. You're gone.
My mommy was the complete opposite. She was like, I am not having you going through what I went through. And she had PTSD about what she went through at the convent school. She's, I'm not having you going to a Catholic school. It's not happening. And then she kind of, because of those experiences, she went away from the church, and she did become Christian. But then when I was older, I used to go to mass with my granny, and I used to go to communion. She can't go to communion. She hasn't even been christened. And my granny said, oh, she has, because when you brought her over, I took her around and had a christened. You know, I remember when I fell pregnant. So I was very older in life compared to a lot of the 15, 16-year-olds. I was 20 when I lost my virginity, and I fell pregnant. The first time I fell pregnant, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the Lord punishing me. I'm not married. My granny's going to go mad. So everyone said, we're going to hide this from granny, because my granddad died when my mum was 13, but it was going to be hidden from granny because she's a devout Catholic. She goes to mass in the morning, she goes to mass in the evening, then she goes to bingo. That's her life. And she got mad. So I was 6 months old, and she rang me. And so I was 6 months pregnant. She rang me and she said, so sure, when were you going to tell me you were pregnant? And I went, Granny, what are you on about? I'm not pregnant. And she went, you're 6 months pregnant to the day. And I said, who's after telling you that? She's your granddad. I said, dead. And she went, it's a good job, because then he can keep an eye on you. Right. She booked me a flight. Oh my gosh, she contacted the doctor in Dublin. She contacted the diocese in Dublin to contact the Vatican over in Rome to get some holy water. And I went over, and I had to go round the corner to the parish, to the parish priest who had baptized me, to then baptize my baby because I wasn't married. So it would be accepted. And I thought, this is so barbaric, this is so backwards. But I did it because that's my granny's way. And I did it for her. And she was my eldest is the first great grandchild in the family. So it was a big deal to my granny. And in Ireland still, and at that time, divorce was still illegal in Ireland. You couldn't get divorced.
Yeah.
And all of my family, their very first boyfriends or girlfriends, they're married to. You don't have this shenanigans in England where they date a million people before they get married. They court, get engaged, get married. And it was just hilarious. But do you know what? I've still got that bond.
And Riona, you couldn't be more Irish. No. I mean, I was listening to you, and I was saying she is definitely Irish, you know, and she's definitely Irish, because I listened to you on a few of the videos that's going around. At what stage did you meet your wonderful husband, who, it has to be said, Keith Mason was a rugby league, wasn't it? Or rugby?
Yeah, he was an international player. He played for England, played for Wales, and he went over to Australia.
You end up with an English player, because you know the way it is in this country. Anyone that'll beat the English team, they'll be happy. I mean, my poor father used to be cheering for England, and I used to be cheering for England if they were playing anyone else except Ireland. And but then if Wales were playing Ireland, he didn't know who to cheer for, because his mother was Welsh, and he was kind of stuck. But he was the only one that in the whole family that would be cheering for England.
I play for Wales because I think somewhere his great dog was born in Wales. I don't think so. He got to play for Wales. But I'm very religious, but I don't know many Irish people that aren't religious. That that it's part of.
I think the Irish nowadays it's become uncool to be religious in many places. But I think still, there's a saying, Riona, there's no atheists in foxholes. And when you really are in a situation like you were, I'm sure your faith became even stronger.
Do you know, before I had my stroke, I wasn't living true to myself. I wasn't living my true, authentic life. I wasn't living the life that God had planned for me. And it's not about walking away from God. It's just that sometimes we think that we can do it on our own. And we like to go and save the world. We think that that's the path that God wants us to be on. And you can only help the people who want to be helped. And the people who don't want to be helped, you plant a seed and you watch that seed grow. But you have to step away from it. And anyone who goes into a relationship to change someone is the wrong thing to do. And I wasn't surrounded by right and like-minded people. So I was trying to be my authentic self, but because the people I was surrounded by, show me your crowd and I will show you your future. My
mom used to always say that, show me your company and I'll tell you what you are.
And my crowd, they weren't, look, my mammy is in conflict. She's had a lot of things that's gone on in her life and she's in complete conflict in her own life. And if people are in conflict in their lives, they're in conflict and they bring that conflict to other people.
Yeah.
So I am, as much as I was honest and true, and my words were true, and I was an honest person, but I wasn't inviting the people who were honest into my life. And I was miserable. I felt like, as much as I got up every day and I went with the motions, I felt like I was being suffocated and I was drowned inside my own life. I was dying whilst I was living, and that's not the way things should be. And I remember the week before I had my first spinal stroke, I fell to the floor, I fell to my knees, and I cried out to God, I can't live like this anymore. I'm in such an abusive marriage. I need to get out of this. Yeah. I don't know this. I'm scared. I'm making excuses for my life. I'm making excuses for why I'm keeping people in my life. I don't know what to do, Lord. So I said, listen, I'm going to hand my life back to you. And it's not that I've made an ass of it. It's just that when I have stopped inviting you into it, things have gone massively wrong. So I'm going to give it back to you. And in return, can you please give me the life that I need to be living? So anyone or anything that is not in the great plan that you have for me in my life, can you just remove them all? Well, I didn't think that the Lord was going to remove.
It's a very good appeal, if you like, really. Just take the people or help you to find a way to remove yourself from the people who are poisonous to you. They may not be poisonous to other people, but they're poisonous to you, or there isn't a yin and yang in your relationship, or that they might be perfect for somebody else, but just not for you.
Yeah. So in that, I didn't expect that the Lord was going to remove everybody and absolutely everything out of my life, apart from myself and my kids. And over time, everybody left that was originally involved in my life, whether it's family, friends, everyone left.
Really?
And then, and a couple of my cousins in Ireland and in Glasgow got in contact with me, and they were a true support. But when I mean, I have aunties and uncles, my mammy, there are 6 of them. There was 9, but 3 of them unfortunately died, and there was 6 of them. And out of all of those 6, most of my aunties and uncles, they had 5 or 6 kids each. So that is, and then they all have the cousins, and it's a big family. And to be left with just a handful of people, but I'm blessed that I got left with a handful of true people. And I was really struggling.
That's what you want in your life, true people.
And it's, the Lord showed me a better way, even though, I have a saying, easy choice, hard life, hard choices, life. And the choices that were presented in front of me were really hard. But I knew eventually that my life would then transform into something it needed to be. So I met a gentleman when I was in the spinal unit. I was really struggling. My mammy had, she tried to strangle me and take me to God before I was ready to go to God. It was a bit of a mess. And I don't hate her for it. I don't have any anger towards her. I let her go with love. She's not right for my life. And
your mother.
Yeah, I had to let her go with love and remove her out of my life. And when I was doing that, it broke me. I lost my mammy, I lost my daddy, and I was absolutely broken. And I couldn't get my head around it. And I was sat one day at the spinal unit. I spent 4 months there. And this old gentleman, he was in his 80s, and he was called Keith. And he asked, could he sit next to me at lunchtime? Because I went 6 weeks and I didn't eat a thing. I starved myself. And that was my way of controlling what was going on in me.
Yeah.
He picked up on this. And he picked up on my pain, even though I was smiling through it. He picked up on it. And he said, so I had lunch with him. I sat with him and we were chatting. And he said to me, I have a message for you. And I don't know whether you believe in God or not, but he's asked me to pass a message on to you. And I don't know whether you're going to understand it, whether it's going to mean something to you. But he's asked.
Was he Irish?
Part Irish.
Yeah, the kind of sees sense. Yeah.
He supplied, like bird's eye peas and the chips and all that. So that was his company. Well, it wasn't. He kind of stepped down and other people ran it. But he was such a nice fella. And I sat and I said, okay. I said, well, I do believe in God. I said, but yeah, you can pass your message on. And he goes, the Lord has said, she's not your mammy. And I know you're grieving and I know you're hurting for the loss, but she's not your mammy. She is a vessel that the Lord needed to use to get you into this world because he has amazing plans for you. And you are going to help millions of people all over the world. You can't see it right now, but your journey is going to heal so many people. You are going to put the Lord's word out there by being your authentic self. So stop grieving for the plans that the Lord has for you and start rejoicing in what you asked him for in the first place, which was his guidance. He's given you it. Now open your heart to receive it. And I sat there and every part of me just stood on end. And I was like, holy moly. And in that moment, every pain that I felt for everyone who'd left, everyone who's supposed to love me, people who were supposed to be there for me, I felt betrayed. It just went out. All the hurt and anger and disgust and went. And I was left with peace. And I was able to go, I love you. And that love that I have.
Isn't it like, well, I know it's only a metaphor, but when you look at your home and you want everything in your home, there's times when you want to just have loads of things around you, possessions and things and objects, and if you replace those with the idea of people around you, you want loads and loads. But then when you start to declutter, and you realize that you're left with the really nice things and the really good things, the really valuable things to you in your house, you can actually function better. And it's the same with having just a few really good friends and a few really good people, significant people in your life who enrich you and make you feel good about yourself, not make you feel like you hate yourself or make you feel dragged down.
The right people. There are high-class people in this world. And when you get it and you understand it, it means that you don't take offense by what someone else does to you because you're in control and you see it for what it is. So I treat people like a tree. So you've got your leaves, your branches, and your roots. Your leaves give you temporary shade. They're there for a while and then they're gone. A gush of wind could come and blow them away. And then the seasons change and they fall off and they're not there anymore. People are like leaves. Some people are like leaves. Don't be insulted by the behavior because they were born to be a leaf. That's what they are. They're a leaf.
I know I've never thought of people as leaves, but the metaphor is fantastic. They're there to create the shade temporarily.
Yes, and they're not meant to end your life permanently.
And in some cases, they are actually creating a shade. They're actually blocking you from seeing things.
Yes, exactly. And then you've got your branches. Now they're the most cruel of all because some branches, well, that's a weak branch. And I can't rely on that because if I step on that, I'm going to break it, but then you get some branches that are really thick and you think if I stand on that, it's going to hold my weight because look at the size of it. It's massive, but inside it's rotten to the core. You stand on it a few times and you think, yeah, that's holding my weight. And then one day you stand on it and it breaks. And the pain that you feel from it breaking and the accidents that happen, everything goes on in your life, but that's what they're meant to be. They are certain times in their life, they're going to be there, they're going to be strong, but at other times they're going to break. But they're a branch, that's what they're meant to be. They gave you what you needed at that moment in time, whether it was a positive or a negative lesson or a character building lesson, whatever the lesson was, learn it, accept that that's a branch, and move on. And then in your life,
so really what you want is to be a root, and you want to be you want to be the bark.
Yeah,
you want to be the stump, that's thick and strong.
The stump you can chop down right to ground level,
and it'll come back.
But the roots, it doesn't matter. You can chop a tree down to the ground level. As long as its roots are still there, it will grow back.
Yeah.
And in life, if you are lucky enough and blessed enough to meet a root, hold on to that root, join with that root, align with that root. That root will align with you, and that root will feed you and nourish you and help you grow, because when you grow, the root grows. When you're stronger, the roots are stronger. And if you're lucky enough, but you need to make sure you're that root, because if you are a branch, you will keep on meeting branches. If you're a leaf, you'll meet leaves. But if you're a root, you can then identify other roots. And it's not about saying, oh, I keep meeting these people. You need to go, well, why do I keep meeting these people?
Yeah.
What? The energy you put out there to the universe is to what you accept back. And it took me to be lying in a bed, paralyzed, fighting for my own existence in this world to realize that. And I'm glad
Riona, Keith was that route for you. At what point? And you can see, I've seldom seen any two people more united than the two of you, and on the same plane, if you like, on the same in the same universe at the same time. Your stars were aligned.
Well, it's God's plan. I firmly meeting Keith, because me and Keith started dating in the October of 2016. We met in the January of 2016, but we never told anyone. We wanted it to be just for us. We wanted to find out what we wanted, and if it was going to work, then we were going to tell the world if it's what we wanted to do. So we kept it under wraps. But when I mean we started dating, I'm very old-fashioned, and that's my granny's fault. But I am so glad that I had my granny. I'm so glad. Everyone needs a Granny Kelly in their life, because she was an absolute beast of a warrior. She was an amazing woman of God. And I'm so blessed that I had her guidance, because she used to say to me, there's two things in life. People say, if you've got it, flaunt it. No, my granny said, if you've got it, wrap it in respect and leave it to the imagination. Don't flaunt. Don't show everything. Don't show all your cards. Don't show everything. Allow people to their life and get to know you. And then you will sift out who's right and who's wrong. And then she said, if you have a guy, you do not give yourself away. You do not give yourself away. You only give yourself to that man or to that boy, whatever it is. When you finally decide that you're ready because everything is in place for you to be ready. Just because when I'm talking about partners, life partners, we go through a few life partners before we find the right one. We have to, because you have to sift out. You have to learn. It's not about you meet the right guy straight away, because you don't even know yourself. You haven't even set your stall out of your morals, your principles, your values, your ethos. Your belief system is not there at 16, 17. You don't even understand yourself. You have to test the waters. But it doesn't mean you test the waters by giving yourself away. You can have plenty of fun with the right people, with the right person.
And
so
people are very fortunate that they meet the right person the first when they're very young, and they never want to be with anybody else. I've one or two friends like that, and I just envy them really, because they life seemed to have gone so perfectly, so quickly, and so permanently for them, and
for me, it's not, I don't envy the people who have met and had that childhood sweetheart.
Bad way. I just
was meant
to think, God, I wish it was me.
Well, that was meant to happen for them. But I'm at least a testimony to say, Keith is gorgeous. Like, to look at aesthetically, he's a very, very good looking man, and he's got a very, very good body. But that's mint imperial, because the Lord said to me, in the June, I wrote this down on a piece of paper that's just at the side of me. And the Lord said to me, I was saying I don't want to be on my own forever, but who's going to want to take me on? Who's going to want to, this disabled and 4 kids, and it's a mess. And the Lord said, it's not a mess.
Paralyzed, a single, and 4 little young children.
Yeah.
And then Keith comes along, and Keith Mason, and you ask him to help you as a personal trainer, and he took you on. He didn't realize that you were paralyzed when you asked him. You had been turned down by other personal trainers. And Keith was the only one who didn't turn you down, and
he did
working with you.
No, because when I started training with Keith, I didn't realize, in my head, there was no point even going there. There's no point even liking a man that I thought was well out of my reach. And this is where that society telling us that society that tells us, oh, well, if you're graded as a 2 and you've got a 10, a 2 can never date a 10. And I hate that. I hate levels like that. And it's crap, and it shouldn't happen. But when I met Keith, the Lord had said to me, he's here now, just walked in. The Lord had said to me, come say hello just quickly.
Hello, Keith.
I must talk to you.
Right, 1 second. So the Lord had said to me, I am never going to, you can be with anyone you want, but if it's not a man that I haven't sent, and if he hasn't got my heart, it will never work. And I didn't realize that he was the one that the Lord had sent for me until I'd stopped training with him, and I put a post out, and I'd done a live, and he saw through my eyes, I was all smiley and I'm going to be here for you guys, but he saw pain in my eyes, and he asked me would I like to go for a coffee, and I jumped at the chance because I'm a single parent at home all the time with kids. I never get any adult interaction. I got along with him, and intellectually we had great conversations, and he made me laugh, so I'd be daft not to take the coffee up. But then I didn't see Keith Mason the trainer, I saw Keith Mason, the man.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, when people say love at first sight, I realized then, oh my gosh, this is the man the Lord has sent for me. How is this going to work? And then the Lord said, he will come to you. He will come to you. He will come to you in his own time, when it's right, when it's ready. Just go inside. And he turned around, and Keith has obviously
it reminds me of my dad, who was English as well, and all you had to do, my mom was a bit and she'd say, Cyril, do this, and without question he'd just do it. Keith is just after moving away now, like a child after being told move over there.
Yes, I think the Irish have a very, very, very dry sense of humor. Gets my humor, and I'll say something to him.
How does he understand you without subtitles? How does he understand you without subtitles?
Because he tries to speak Irish himself, and he sounds like a gypsy.
Because
hold on. That's what he said.
Because my dad used to be very quietly spoken, and he'd say something, and Mum would say to me, "What's your father saying?" And I'd have to tell my mother what my father was saying, and they both spoke English.
So I can understand him, but the thing is, he's travelled the world with his rugby career. And then with his acting career, he has been in lots of different places all over the world. So he's not particularly strong Yorkshire. But if he takes me to some other parts of Yorkshire, I look at him and go, what are they saying? I don't understand them. I'm like, eh?
They don't consider themselves English in Yorkshire. No more than in Newcastle. My uncle was from Newcastle. I was born in Wembley, and my dad was born in Wembley. But my uncle was from Newcastle. If you said to him, "Are you English?" he'd say, "No, I'm from Newcastle." And Yorkshire people tend to be the same.
I'm from Yorkshire, but he's okay. No worries. With him, when you meet someone, and it's not about meeting someone. Obviously, aesthetically, we have to be like them. We have to look at them and go, yeah, we're attracted to them. But when the right person, when you finally set your stall out of your values, your morals, your principles, your life journey, the things that you want to get out of life, when you set your stall out, you need to meet someone who has the same kind of values and principles. They need to add positivity to your stall. And if they don't, you have to let them go. Because if you don't let them go, you're going to be living a life that you regret, or that you angry against, and that you don't go into, you end up hate. I don't hate anything in my life. I really don't. I can dislike things, but I think hate and anger is a very strong emotion that you then work from that place. You don't work from a place of love.
Did meeting Keith, how long after your marriage broke up, say, were you lucky enough to meet Keith, and did that help you too? Because it's a traumatic, I can imagine it must be absolutely traumatic to have a breakdown in marriage, especially.
Oh no, it was a godsend. He's an absolute monster, my ex. My marriage had broken down 5 years before I left, because for me, a woman leaves a marriage emotionally long before she leaves it physically. And I'd left 5 years.
Do you not feel, some people in your situation, no matter how bad the situation is, and I think you're an example now to people of getting out when things aren't going right. There are people who, in your position, paralyzed, 4 children, and you're saying to yourself, am I better off in the marriage, or am I better off leaving the marriage? Because what am I going to do when I left? You were strong enough to say no, and to remain on your own until you met Keith. But you were strong enough to do all of that, more or less, with the help of your children only.
The thing was with me, I despised myself for being weak and staying in a relationship that was that toxic that I shouldn't have been in it. I should have never been in it in the first place. I married my mammy. I married a male version of my mother. And I married him to get away from her control. And I realized...
I understand that, Riona. I can understand
how
people marry somebody who reminds them of somebody else.
No, it wasn't that it reminded me. It was what I knew. If you'd put Keith in front of me when I was 22, when I met my ex, oh my gosh, I'd have been scared to death of Keith, because I didn't know it. It wasn't something I knew. A good, honest.
He was too nice.
He had the Lord's heart, and I wasn't ready for that, because I grew up in a very narcissistic, controlling environment, that if I was everything that I allowed my mother control, and I didn't have a mind of my own, and I allowed her to live her lost life through me, then I had a great relationship with her. And as soon as I had my own voice and my own opinion, and I didn't run everything by her, then it was very, very toxic. There was no in between. It was either really good or really bloody bad. And I couldn't make a decision for myself without her being in my ear, dictating my life. And I needed to break free from that.
Were you an only child?
No.
No.
I had my brother. He's older than me. And when we were young kiddies, she was great, because we were under her control. But as soon as we got older and started to have our own lives, it was like she needed to say stuff. So I remember when I was 15. Now, I've been allowed to go clubbing since I was 13. I had my curfew. I could go to nightclubs at 13. I looked a lot older than what I was. And I was a lot older myself, because she'd had a mental breakdown when I was 12. So I started being the adult of the house and running the home at a very young age, until she was ready to take back over. And she never fully took over the reins. It was always, the responsibility was put on my shoulders. And it was too much too soon. But then I was allowed to go out clubbing. I had to be in by 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm a mammy myself now. There's no way that my 13-year-old child is going out clubbing and coming in at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. No way. It's not responsible parenting. And they lose their childhood. So when I was 15, she tried to rein all that back in, and people are saying she shouldn't be doing that, it's wrong.
Too late.
And I wasn't doing anything bad. I wasn't getting up shenanigans. I was just allowed to be too older before my years. And I remember we had an argument about it. And when you let a child do something for so long, and you try to rein them back in once they get to teenage years, all the rest of it, and they have an opinion, it doesn't work. I know, because I was a teacher for 15 years. It doesn't work. So these are the type of things that she would either make elaborate lies up to try and rein me back in. Yeah. So I was 15 having an argument with her, and she said, you were born in sin, made in sin, and you will always be sin. You came from hell. And I looked at her and went, what are you on about? She says, the only reason you're in this world is because you're a product of a rape. And that's it. Your biological father, which is my brother's biological father, he raped me. And that's why you're here. You're just dirt. And you know what? Those words massively impacted me, massively impacted the decisions I made. I remember that night getting in the hottest bath you could possibly think of. It burnt my skin. I put bleach in it and I scrubbed myself. You remember the old wire scourers? And I was bled. I had that much disgust in who I was. When I looked in the mirror, all I saw was horror staring back at me. And so when I went for someone who treated me with disgust, I went for people who treated me how I saw myself.
Yeah.
When I started to move forward in life, when I had that stroke, and I thought, you are not that person. You have got to stop inviting these people into your life, because they are just embodying how you feel about yourself. They're not changing. You're not growing as a human being. You're staying in that toxic mindset that somebody else put on you, and you've carried someone else's hate and bitterness around all these years. You got to let it go, Riona. And when I let it go, the right people started to come into my life. And like today, I said to Keith, I stood in the mirror, I stood up and I said to Keith, do you see that woman staring back at you in this mirror? That woman owes her life to you. And he went, what are you on about?
What are you on about?
All it took was true, honest love. God's love.
But if you ever look at, when you look at Chinese and you look at Indian medicine and that, and they always say that a lot of physical illnesses come from stress, or come from being in toxic environments. And when I say toxic environments for you, the person that was toxic towards you may not be toxic towards somebody else, because and my mother used to always say, every old stocking meets an old shoe. And yep. And it is true. I mean, apparently there's someone there for everybody, and you know, people who are toxic for you might find the perfect person that they can live in harmony somewhere else. But for you, and that could have affected you as well physically. And now that you're in a stable and happy relationship, and I've watched your Keith's videos, because he puts up quite a lot up about you, it just seems that it works both ways, that the feelings that you have for Keith are reciprocated, because he seems to completely and utterly have taken on your children as his own. And more importantly, they seem to look on him as a dad.
They adore him. Like Logan was only 3 when he first met Keith. And I think he just turned 4. He just turned 4 in the October.
But
so
your older girl.
My oldest girl, my eldest one, she's 20 this month.
She seems to have internalized all the stress of you. You're
on Isabella. She does a lot of TikToks with him, and she, right. I firmly believe that a little girl's first love should be her daddy, and a little boy's first love should be his mammy. And when you love that person, that's the kind of person you end up going for. So if parents are not living their true, authentic self lives, and if they're not being the best version of themselves every day, your children are going to end up dating yourself, because that's what they go for. That's what we learn from our parents, or from whoever is an influencer in our life as a child. And he's come in, and not only, she was 6, bless her. She's 13 now, and she was 8 or 9 when she first met Keith. And when she was 6, her biological father was still around at that time, and I was paralyzed. And she wrote a prayer to God. And I found it when we were cleaning our bedroom out, and I was in tears, and I showed Keith, and he broke down in tears, and he was like, it affirms even more that this was from God. Meeting you is destined, it's planned, it was always meant to be. she wrote a prayer and she asked God to send a man who would love her mammy the way she loves her mammy, because the man that is there right now is horrible and evil to her mammy, and that breaks her to see that. And I thought I'd hidden it quite well from my kids, just how bad he was with me, but we don't hide everything. They know more than
you never hide.
And
you never.
And then at the end of the prayer she says, and one more thing, Lord, could you bring a real daddy for me? A daddy that you have sent, not someone who made me, because that's not a daddy. He's a monster. And she was 6. And then she went back to it when she first met Keith. And she went back to that prayer and she wrote the date when I first took her, when I was still training with Keith. And I took her because she was off school poorly. And I said, she's okay. She's had a bit of a vomiting bug and they're not allowed, she's fine now, but she's not allowed to go to school until tomorrow. Can I bring her with me? And he said, yeah, sure. And I brought her with me. Oh my gosh, she went doughy-eyed. She saw me, she was like, and she started asking him a few questions. And then when she came home,
Keith has done a lot of modelling and acting. It has to be said now. He's really involved in acting. He's taken the complete turn over. So he's no longer a rugby player.
No, he's that was down to Mickey Rourke. Mickey Rourke is a very good friend of Keith's, and he just decided to put him in, asked him, would he want to be in a film? And Keith was still playing rugby at this point, and he didn't have another agenda of, when I retire, because you're a long time retired as a rugby player. You only have a very short, I mean, he had a 15-year career. That's a long career for a rugby player.
He's a friend of Mickey Rourke, is he?
Mickey Rourke's a very good friend.
Well,
and he went to the film and he thought, oh, I quite like this acting.
I'm
going to do this. Do you know what? I'm going to retire and do this. And it's another hard career to get into. It's another hard thing to break into that field.
Yeah.
Then all the little rugby players in life, people were saying to me, we did a talk together, and people were saying, well, how did you manage to do this? And how did you manage to do that? And he was answering it. And then they said, oh, what's your opinion on it, Riona? And I said, how he's managed to have his rugby career, and you think he's mad for wanting to become an actor. I said, let me tell you something. I said, out of all the little rugby players, all the little aspiring lads who play rugby, who think they'd like to play for their country, only 1% of them get to play for a lower division team. Out of those lower division teams, all the kids, only 1% of them go on to play Super League. And out of your Super League, only one of them go on to play international. And out of those international players, only 1% of them go to Australia. Keith has been a 1%er his whole life. He doesn't know anything other than being a 1%er. So out of all of the aspiring actors, only 1% of them go on to be in Hollywood. He will go on to be in Hollywood. Why? Because he doesn't know how to be anything other than that 1%. He's got so much belief in himself, but not in an egotistical way.
No, that sense of belief, I mean, you were obviously somebody who deep down had that sense of belief, Riona, but it was trampled on for so long, and it was suppressed, and it was ready to burst out of you. And given the right set of circumstances, those roots were ready to spread.
They were
and grow. And you did find the perfect person. You found the yin to your yang, or the yang to your yin, whichever. I'm never sure which is the yin and which is the yang. But you did find it in Keith. And
I remember one day. So there's a.
What was it like when you started to walk again? Keith actually physically, I know it wasn't just Keith. We can't just say there were physiotherapists. There was you involved. You had to want to walk again. You had to want to put yourself through the pain of it, through the disappointment if things didn't go right for you, and you didn't end up walking again. And then you had the physiotherapists in the hospital who all worked on you, and then Keith was the icing on the cake, the person who was at home. It's like an Irish dancer, and I'm involved in Irish dancing.
I love Irish.
And it's like having having to have, in order to make the champion, you have to have all the ducks lined up. I'm thinking of the ducks behind me now, but you have to have all the ducks lined up. You have to have the talent. You have to have the determination. You have to have the will to practice. You have to have the parents who are going to push you and keep you going and dancing. And you have to have the money to be able to afford the costumes and the travel and things like that, sadly. But with you, it wasn't enough that you were able to walk, that you were determined to walk. You had to have the good physiotherapists who'd work with you. Then you had to go home to a partner who encouraged you and helped you, not just encouraged you, but was physically able to help you to walk again. And you had it all in this relationship.
You know, when I think the reason why me and Keith align is because it's meant to be. It's just, it's kismet. It's meant to be that we're meant to be together. It was the greatest plan. When I was younger, he's 20 months younger than me. So when I was younger, I used to go ice skating. At the same time, he went ice skating. Our paths never crossed. I used to go places that he went. Our paths never crossed. When I did my first marathon in my wheelchair, we didn't do like the London Marathon that's designated. We did a push from one area to another. And on that first part of the push, he saw me. We just didn't, it was already lining up, but we just didn't connect. But when my consultant said to me, it's not that you can't learn how to walk again. It's just that it's going to be the hardest thing you've ever faced in your life. There's only 1% of people who go through what you've gone through and learn how to walk.
Basically, no reason why you couldn't walk again, because your spinal cord wasn't snapped. It was that it had gone into shock, obviously gone into shock, and you'd forgotten how to walk. Is that it?
No. So my whole spine went into shock. But then as it started to come out of that, we started to figure out that, medically they could see what I could and couldn't do. And then it kind of stopped at T10. But that's where my original spinal stroke was. And it's like if you get an electric box that signals everywhere, you've got your main hub. If you were to take a screwdriver and stab it all the way through the other side of that, you would still get, some of the signals would be completely broken. Some of the signals would be partially intact. Some of the signals are still intact. So some of my muscles in my legs, the signals are still there. So I have part of my quads far off, not all of them, part of my quads far off, which allows me to stand. The tiny little muscles in your glutes that are behind your piriformis that you can't feel, actually you could never feel in your butt working, those are firing off. You've got two little muscles in each buttock that's firing off behind all the big muscles. And then on the front of my leg, where my calf is, the bone that runs down, the muscle that runs on the outside of that bone. So you've got three muscles that work in your calf muscle to make your foot do this.
Yeah.
So one that goes that way, that's your biggest muscle. One that goes that way, and two of them working together makes it go up. And then you've got the muscle that makes your big toe lift. Your big toe lifting lifts all the other toes.
Yeah. So
I've only got that big muscle that makes it go that way working. So when I walk, that kicks in and I go that way. So it's trying to, so I've only got those three little muscle groups that work in my legs. The rest of them, some of them, the signals are trying to fire off. So it's meaning that we have to get those signals and those pathways stronger. And then others, they're never going to fire off because it's gone. It doesn't work. So that's where it is with people who, that's my injury and that's what it's like for me. So when people go, how can you say you're paralyzed? Because a lot of my muscle groups from T10 down don't work, will never work again. They are paralyzed. Those muscles are buggered. They're not going to work. You can learn how to walk if you've got an incomplete injury. It's just, if you do not have the right therapy, you're going to knacker yourself even more. You're going to set yourself back. And unfortunately, how rehabilitation is done has not changed in like 60 years. And it needs to change. It needs to evolve to give people like myself and other people who have, whether it's a spinal cord injury or whether it's a stroke, because I'm in between both. I've got a spinal cord injury that's caused by a spinal stroke. So I'm in both worlds.
You do much swimming?
Swimming's brilliant because when you're in the water, your muscles don't actually have to work as hard because you've got the force of the water helping you as well. But it's, if I stop my rehab, if I spent time in my wheelchair and I never moved my legs, I would be completely done. I would never, for me, I have to get on my legs every day. I have to do my daily rehab, no matter how tired I am, because if I stop, my legs stop, the muscles that are working at 10%, I've only, instead of 100%, I've only got 10% of those muscles that are working at 10% capacity. So if I don't keep on working them, my legs will eventually stop working altogether.
Now,
and I'm permanently in a wheelchair.
I'm fascinated when I'm looking at your videos and that at how toned your body, certainly your legs look. And you know, and you're looking huh?
On my legs, and I suffer really bad with muscle spasms. Now, when you've got muscle spasms, your muscles are contracting all the time, so they don't fully waste away. So my legs, and at first I learned to walk on my spasms. That's how I walk. So when I had spasms, that's when I tried to use whichever muscles I could to try and I was all over the place. And then I use an FES machine that keeps those muscles strong, keeps those muscles which is so important. It's so, and I'm lucky that I've met someone who was a sports and person and very high level sports he played. So he had the best physios, the best this, the best.
He played at the highest. I mean,
he knows about.
He played for his country.
Yeah,
you know, so you don't get higher than.
He would have played more for his country, but Keith is oh gosh, when he was younger, Keith wasn't a bad lad. It's just show me your crowd, I'll show you your future. He had the wrong people around him, but he grew up in an area that was very deprived. So there were lots of other kids that grew up in that area, and you find that deprived areas. I know from living on Sheriff Street. My granny wasn't deprived. When she moved to Sheriff Street, it wasn't a crap area. It's just over time that's how it went.
Great people there as well. Do you know what I mean? You know, because you know it can be hard.
Stop being bold. Now in England, bold means to be strong. In Ireland, it means you're naughty. You're bold as brand. Or no, there's times I don't say it anymore. But when my people annoyed me when I was younger, you carry on, I bleed and straight out with you. But that is where I grew up. You know, or I'd say to my kids, will you go get a sliced pan from around the corner or a batch? And Keith looks at me and goes, what the hell is a batch?
when
a loaf of bread that's one slice. If you want a sliced pan, it means a sliced loaf. So we would go, when I was younger, you wouldn't go to the main supermarket. You'd go around to your corner shop. You'd ask the guy, can I have a batch? He'd give you a normal loaf of bread that you had to slice yourself. If I asked for a sliced pan, it would mean I wanted the loaf slice it up. He was like,
here in Limerick, it was a loaf. It was a loaf if you were looking for unsliced. But my mum went to England first, and she was looking for this thing to put into the oil fire that you'd light, and it would light the fire. And it was here in Ireland, it was called a worm.
Yeah.
And in England, it was called a wick. So she went in looking for a worm for the fire, and he said, and the guy said to her, "Madam, this is not a fishing tackle shop." And she was like, you know, she was kind of looking at him, you know, "Madam, this is not a fishing tackle shop." She was looking for the wick for the fire that you could buy, and you put it in, and then there's kind of paraffin on it, and you light it, and it would light the fire. But in Ireland, it was called a worm.
Kay says to me, I have never known anyone who can make so many dishes out of a potato. I said, listen, you learn 100+ dishes how to make a potato the most delicious thing on the planet. I said, we don't I never chop my potatoes. I don't even peel them. I put them in, and a big potato, I just score around the middle, put them in the pot, and then just go whoop, and the skin comes off. I said, he said, well, why'd you do that? I said, because the skin are the most nutrients. It gives it the most flavour. You only take the skin off if you really need to. I said, but when I make caul cannon, I leave my skin on. I mash it with the skin on. And I said, it's called bubble and squeak over here. I said, but you don't use curly kale. You can't use normal kale. It's got to be curly kale to make called cannon. And he was like, okay.
And potatoes with onions inside in it, and lots of milk. And
yeah, I said to him, I said, listen, I said, we have a tradition in Ireland. Well, I did in my family, and a lot of people do. I said, so we have a barn brack. And now, when you always had a ring.
Yeah.
Brack. And I said, so when a guy wanted to get engaged to a woman, the ring went inside the barn brack. She got the slice that had the ring in. But we all ate barn brack all the time. I loved it. It's just fruit loaf. I loved it.
Yeah,
but my granny would never. And then, like the fish, she would go down, because obviously living on Sherry Street, you're right. She'd go down to the docks on a morning. She'd get her fresh fish and she'd skin it and gut. I was sick when she was doing it, popping its eyes out and everything. I'm like, that's disgusting, granny. But that's what she did. And it's, oh gosh.
I won't eat fish if I can see their eyes. I won't eat. I love fish, but I
oil the head with the eyes in it because of the flavour. But like,
Riona.
Granny, just allow me to taste it when you've cooked it. I said, and the Christmas cake. Oh my gosh.
That'd be cooking for. That'd be doing for months, because you'd be putting more whiskey in and more. I think it's whiskey. Or brandy. Is it brandy or whiskey? I don't drink alcohol, so I don't know. Whatever it was very moist.
You got drunk off eating my granny's cake. You got drunk. It was absolutely fabulous. And some of the times I think I still wish she was around today, because the shenanigans that some of my family have got up to, she'd have knocked all the heads together. They wouldn't have dared. When she was around, no one dared put a finger out wrong, because if you did, Mammy was coming. And if you're granny, and they go, well, sure, you're not a true, aren't Irish, like really pale skin and fire red hair? I said, no, that's Scottish that came into Ireland in the 1600s and 50s to try and outbreed us. It didn't work. It did not work. I said, a true Irish Colleen, she's pale, but she tans well. And she's got dark hair and green eyes. And he went, Keith goes, well, how's that? I said, Spanish and Portuguese? But they came up.
The Spanish came into Ireland on the Armada. They thought they were off the coast of England. They got their bearings wrong, and they landed off the coast of Ireland near Galway. And
I said, my great-granddad is Spanish and my great-granddad is Portuguese. I said, and he was 6'6". So in the 1880s, 6'6" was ridiculous, and she was 6'4".
6'4".
My great granny 6, and then my granny is only 5 foot nothing. I am so proud to be Irish, the heritage of where we come from. And people say, but look what your mammy did to you. I said, I'm not allowing one person to destroy my pride of a whole country. I'm not allowing it. It won't happen. I said, but I'm also proud to be.
Is your mum alive still? Or do you ever see her?
Her physical body is still on this planet. But when I had to let her go, I had to mourn as if she passed. Because, and people are like, well, you only get one mammy and you only get one daddy. I said, well, my daddy's never been involved in my life. I said, my father is God. That's my maker. He's always been there for me regardless. He's never abandoned me. I've abandoned him, but he's never abandoned me. I said, and as for my biological birth mother, it's not right. It's just not healthy. It's not healthy in my life. It's not healthy in my children's life. And I don't miss her. I don't miss the drama. I don't miss the negativity. I don't miss it. And I have very fond memories of her. And I prefer to think about the fond memories. And I'm a lot like her. She's very talented. She's ridiculously good at cooking. But I don't know many Irish people are crap at cooking, by the way. I said, but
maybe it's because I'm English, but I mean, I am pretty. Well, I'm not, but I just choose not. I'm not really one of these people who likes being in the kitchen. I'm looking at your kitchen and it's beautiful.
This is my bedroom. This is my bedroom.
I thought that was your kitchen table. That's your bedroom.
I love cooking. But then I spent a lot of time with my granny cooking. So for me, when I'm in the kitchen and I'm making, the thing with my granny, she never had a set recipe. Just give her items, 5 items food. She could make a gourmet dish out of it and make it taste wonderful in the tiniest little kitchen I've ever known, with the little appliances that she had, the lack of technology she had in her kitchen. I mean, I love it. But then we come from a family of cooks, because my uncle used to win head top chef in Ireland all the time. 5 years in a row, he won the #1 European chef when they all go into the competitions and stuff. Yeah. Fabulous chef. And all my family can cook, all of them. And so I got that from my mammy. She's better baking, not a brilliant baker. She's better baking than me. But she's very arty-farty, my mammy. She's very talented. And I'm not going to... A lot of people, when they fall out with someone, they just hate on them.
Yeah.
The best people to meet in the world are the people... I don't hate on her. I can't stop loving her, because love is love.
It's very hard to switch off loving somebody, especially somebody that's your biological mother. Do you know, it's very hard. You can be angry and with things that happened, and you can distance yourself from that person.
I have no feeling. I've let it all go, and I wish all the best in life. I wish her all the happiness in life, but just not in mine, because it's toxic. And oh my gosh, Keith wouldn't have stood for it, because Keith is very old school. He's very old fashioned with his values and principles.
Well, he's very much a family man anyway.
Oh,
you can see that.
He dotes on his family. But like, we were on national television in the UK on Good Morning Britain, and the host turned around and said, "So who wears the trousers in the relationship?"
Obvious who wears the trousers, Riona, and I only know you an hour.
And who's the stronger one? He said, "Listen, physically, I might look stronger, but she's strong." He said, "She's taken." He said, "Look, people might go, oh, I came into her life and I transformed her life." No, we were both struggling. I was still struggling.
You both had to want to walk. You had to want to change your life. And
he said we both brought each other into the light that we needed to be in. He said she supports everything I do that's going to positively add value, and I grow as a human being. Yeah. But I tell you, if I'm doing something that goes against values and principles that I stand for, she is the first person to go, no, and she accountable, like I make her accountable. He said she grounded me years. She said, "No, you're not doing this, you're not doing," and it wasn't control. And people go, "Oh, you're trying to control me." No, she wanted the very best for me. She knew the path I was on, it wasn't my path. It wasn't. I knew the path she was on wasn't right. So we brought each other, and our paths aligned. Yeah. And so when you're living in truth and you embody truth in everything you do, and at the top of your pyramid has to be love. You have to lead from love. And then underneath that has to be accountability. You have to be accountable for your choices, actions, and reactions. So when I met my ex, it was fear of the unknown that I met, because it was everything I knew, all the badness that he stood for.
Yeah. Well, I know, I can understand that. You're just afraid of what the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. You're just afraid of stepping out.
We do what we know. We do what, even though, look, addicts have a pattern. And it's not that they're not strong enough to break that pattern. They just don't know how to break the pattern, because they go back to what they know. They go back to their safety. And generally people's safety net is a toxic net.
Yeah.
You need to learn to be your own safety net. You need to learn to value your own self. And when you learn that you are priceless, you're priceless. There is not a value you could put on yourself, because if you had the most priceless gem on the planet, it was the only one of its kind. It was the most rarest stone in the world, because it was the only one. You couldn't, it wouldn't even be worth trillions. There's no price you could put on it. We are those priceless gems, because there's only one of us on the planet with our DNA system. There's no one else like us. If we do not treat ourselves as a priceless commodity and take care of ourselves as if we would the most precious gem, and look after it and nurture it and put it in the right environment so it's going to thrive, if we don't do that for ourselves, then we do not know our worth. It took me paralyzed to realize my worth. And then when I finally realized my worth, sometimes Keith will say, well, you accepted that in the past. I'll say, well, I don't accept it now because I learned the lesson. When you learn the lesson, you move forward. And sometimes it can take people 40 years to get it, to learn the lesson. Anyone can change at any point. I do not like that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Oh, you can. But you just got to take time and effort to continue to put goodness into that old dog. And continue, if you are your authentic self and you do not allow someone else's emotions, someone else's toxicity, someone else's ways and belief system to toxicate yours, you stay strong in who you are as a person, you stay true in who you are, and you carry on putting out that truth. Everyone knows the story. Most people all over the world know the story of Keith and Riona. But it's taken 5 years of hard graft and 6 years for me, 5 years of me and Keith being together, and 6 years behind the scenes hard graft to be where we are now in life. Nothing in life. I have another saying. Hard choices, easy life. Easy choices, hard life. I had all the hard choices to make, and I have a great life now. When people say, would you want your legs back? Of course. I would have to say, of course I want to run around and do everything everyone else does. But if I hadn't have had that happen to me, I wouldn't be living the life I'm living now.
No.
And would I give up the life I am now to live the life I had and have my legs back? Not a prayer. No way.
Yeah, I can understand that. Well, you know, Riona, I could talk to you forever. I just feel like we've known each other for forever, really. You're such a chatterbox. We've only scratched the surface of Riona Kelly and Keith Mason's life. Are you Mrs. Mason now, or are you always Riona Kelly?
No, my ex likes to hold on, bless him. God bless him. So I've been going through a divorce now for 6 years. Okay. So, and then COVID hit, so it kind of slowed the whole process down. But Keith's mentality is, if you have a thought, can you action that thought? And if the answer is yes, do you want the outcome of the action? And if the answer is no, don't even think about it. It's not worth it. If you have a thought, can you action it? And the answer is no, I can't do anything about that thought yet. And yes, I want the outcome, but I can't do anything about it. Then he won't do it. So when people say, why have you not put a ring on her finger? Because she's still married. Legally, she's still in the eyes of the law married to someone else, although she's not with him and she's been divorced from him in her heart and her mind for years. If I put a ring on her finger, can I marry her? No, I've got to wait for that piece of paper to come along. So I'll put a ring on her finger when I can actually action that thought and
put a ring on it. It's that song is really meant for you.
Yeah, so he will do, but he'll do it. Everything happens at the right time. He'll do it when everything is in place for him to go. I don't want to be engaged to you for 5 years and be fighting to try and get divorced so we can get married. I don't want that stress on me. I want you to be free to marry someone else before I go, boom. He said, you already are my wife in my heart.
Yeah.
There's not leaving you. I've done the for better or worse thing. You told me after my second stroke. I said to him after my second stroke, you can leave me now because you didn't sign up for this. And he went, I signed up to love you. And my love doesn't change just because I've got to get you dressed, just because I've got to wipe your ass, just because I've got to catheterize you so you can have a wee. I've got to feed you. I've got to do everything for you. My love doesn't change. My love is still the same. And I still want the best for you. So if I abandon you in your hour of need, what kind of man am I? It's not happening. I'm here for the long haul, for better or for worse.
That's just, I mean, we can only all pray to, we can only all pray to meet somebody like that in our lives, that enriches our lives rather than draws from it or drags it down. And that's all anyone can hope for. I think it's the most important thing that people can actually hope for. Well, Riona Kelly, Thank you so much for being my guest.
Welcome, darling. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the banter as well.
Only people from Ireland understand the Irish banter, I think, but Shindera leis an Clár, that's the end of the show for today. Until the next time, Lacuna of Day, but Wallam to Galer Chiacana, Sanas agus Gra, agus Gade Ship Slán. Good day, Ship Slán, Riona. Slán.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.